And so we see this mentality, this victim mindset that I don't want to put in the work. And therefore, if it's hard, if it's difficult, if it requires any energy, then it must be oppressive. What's going on, gentlemen? This is the Better Man channel, where we choose to get to know ourselves, to work on ourselves before we pretend to know anything else of value. There's a saying in the rooms of recovery, AA and NA, that says no matter where you go, you'll always be there. Because there's this idea that those in need of hope, those struggling with addiction, that if they could get a fresh start, if I could just remove myself from this situation, then everything would be okay. And that's understandable, that's even rational, but the wisdom in those rooms reminds them that no matter where you go, you'll still be there. If you haven't did the inward work, if you haven't figured out who you are and what the problem is and what the issue is so that you can remedy it, it's always going to externalize itself. And so we live in these unparalleled times where it's almost trendy and fashionable to claim that you are oppressed. Someone has did me an injustice. Somewhere, someone has did me wrong. And we take on this victim mindset. And in conversations with others, it seems as those that are oppressed or have this idea they are oppressed, that they're almost instigating culture and those around them to claim oppression as well. Oh, you say that no one's oppressed you? Well, let's sit down for a minute and we'll figure out someone that's did you some wrong. And they take on this victim mindset, this what Nietzsche would call a slave morality, where the upper class that has this master morality, where what they call good has been useful to them. They've acquired wealth, they've acquired status, they've acquired a good life. And so this lower class, this slave morality is adopted, where they call the good of the upper class evil because they don't have it. And while oppression may exist, it's this mindset, this victim mindset, this oppressed mindset that enslaves us. You're never going to rise to your full potential if you're stuck in that excuse and blaming and poor, pitiful me. Like the sayings in the room of recovery. No matter where you go, you're still going to be there. So this oppressed victim mindset is saying, you've acquired wealth, you've acquired prestige, you've acquired status, you've worked on yourself. We don't have it. Internally, we want it. We harbor this sinister drive to have what you have, but we don't want to put in the work. We just want it because we deserve it. And that's the entitled socialistic culture that we live in now. I want what you have because I deserve it, and you've oppressed me, so you need to hand it over. And I'm not so naive to say that there's not always going to be an us and them. There is. There's always going to be opposition. We're people, and we have different mindsets. But instead of having irrational logic in trying to turn things around, we have to have feet to stand on. Because when we bring about change, there's always going to be a period of chaos. That's what change is. It's going into the unknown and beginning to create this new idea, this new way. So there's always going to be a period of chaos. But if you become like these entitled, oppressed assholes, you don't have any legs to stand on. You're just complaining because it's the fashionable thing to do. You are bringing about this oppression because you don't want to put in the work. You don't want to work on yourself. You don't want to do the internal work. You don't want to do the external work that it takes to actually be successful. There are some traditions and values in this country that are sustainable, that are the very principles of success. And we see this mentality, this victim mindset that I don't want to put in the work. And therefore, if it's hard, if it's difficult, if it requires any energy, then it must be oppressive. And so we're experiencing this woke generation that's turning up, down, left, right, good, evil, merely for the sake of disruption, merely for the sake of chaos, but they're not replacing it with anything that's sustainable. It's a poor, pitiful me, crybaby mentality. It's a child throwing a tantrum because they're not getting what they want. for a lack of understanding. We don't blame the child because he throws a fit. He just hasn't learned how to handle that. But when you're 20, 30, 40, throwing a fit because you haven't chosen to do the inner work so that you can actually change the external, there's no excuses. And I'm all for adapting and change. We have to be flexible. We can't be so rigid in our ways that we break anytime change comes. But we can't be so flexible that our boundaries collapse. In order to be sustainable, in order to hold true to the principles that progress society, we have to do the inner work. We have to know who we are and what we stand for and what is true before we can externalize that. We want to paint the picture. We want to paint the world in a color that benefits all. Yet the color we've painted ourselves is enslaving. It's oppressing our own selves. It's becoming the victim of our own ignorance. And that's what we see the state of society leaning towards today. We're oppressed. We're the victims. Well, then you're always going to be oppressed and you're always going to be a victim because that's the internal mindset that you're placing the lens of your perception through. Be a victor. Put in the work that rewards you with success. Put in the work that rewards you with a victor mindset, not a victim mindset. It's never fashionable to be oppressed. It's never fashionable to be a victim. Get that out of your mind. Become the victor. And as men, that is our place to begin to create that idea, to begin to live out that ideal. We're never victors. I don't care if you oppress me. I'm never going to take the oppression mindset. I'm going to do what it takes to work internally on me so that I can begin to know the value that it is required to change the external and what it takes. It doesn't take a poor, pitiful mindset. It takes someone that's strong. It takes someone that's knowledgeable, that's rational, that's logical. I love you guys. You'll hear me next episode.